Maevius Lynn is a ceremonial magician and occultist who has been practicing for over a decade. She is an artist, writer, and YouTuber who is particularly interested in making the occult accessible and inclusive. The particular focus of her occult path is Thelema. She currently resides in the southern United States, where she is active in her local pagan community. She is an active member of the fraternal occult group Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO, where she serves as an assistant local body officer. Her educational content can be found on her YouTube channel, which I find very interesting and informative. And tonight, my guest, a special welcome to Maevius Lynn. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's such a joy to be here and with all of your listeners and viewers today.
I've been looking forward to this. You've got a very good YouTube channel. That's the way that I discovered you. And you have an interest that's very close to my heart. As a matter of fact, Aleister Crowley, I took my occult first name, Aleister, from him, a lot of respect. But can you tell us a little bit about your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a ceremonial magician, and for the past more than a decade now, I've been a solo practitioner, but for the last handful of years, I have participated in a number of different groups in person. My specific focus in ceremonial magic is Thelema, and right now I am a member of the OTO, or Ordo Templi Orientis, as a local body officer, where I volunteer my time there. And I really enjoy the rituals, initiations, Gnostic Mass, all of that. And also I'm active in my local pagan community. Of course, I would say the bulk of my work is done on my own, with the support of that fraternal organization right now. And yeah, it's been a fun ride.
So how did you come to be involved in that?
Yeah, so this happened a long time ago. I would say about when I was in middle school. Grew up in Florida, and when I was growing up, that was about the time, and it's still happening now. It's interesting. I guess these things sort of come in waves, but there was a really big push to ban what they deemed as unsavory books. So anything LGBT was gone. Even if there was a gay character in the book, that was gone. All books containing evolution were gone, and these books were removed from the public libraries as well as school libraries. So me being a young queer person, growing up, coming of age, asking a lot of questions, I desperately wanted to read more about this, see representation, figure myself out. And of course, this was at a time quite a while ago where the internet wasn't what it is today, where we have such great communities and online resources. That just wasn't happening. We had forums at best. Good luck. So with the absence of things I was curious about, like science and these LGBT subjects, what was vaguely interesting left over was philosophy. So I started deep dive reading. First, I got my hands on existentialism, like Camus and Sartre, Heidegger, these philosophers, and I very slowly made my way into nihilism with Friedrich Nietzsche. So I was really, it took a while, of course, to understand what I was reading, but it was a worthy pursuit. And I eventually started a blog online to connect with people of similar interests and mindset, people who wanted to discuss this. And the people outside of the academic ivory tower who were most interested in talking to me about these subjects, and which eventually became the occult as well, were actually people in the Church of Satan. So I've never officially joined the Church of Satan, but I made some really solid, great friends I've held to this day there, and who share that passion. And it was within the Church of Satan, one of my dear friends introduced me to Aleister Crowley, and that at that early age just sort of set in motion what would be a lifelong study and pursuit and journey. So at that time, I put aside my studies of Crowley in particular, went to college, got involved in the Free Thought Society, and all of this was happening before the Satanic Temple existed. So I guess I should say that. But yeah, when the Satanic Temple many years later came into existence, I did join that and help out there. But that it seemed like my interests were more esoteric, occult, ritual based, and I was really more interested in the community ritual and initiation process, which I was like, hey, maybe I should return back to Crowley and give him a deep dive he deserves. And one thing led to another. I connected with the OTO. And the OTO, for people who are not familiar, that is the occult fraternal organization that's most associated with Aleister Crowley. So he had a prominent role in developing a lot of the initiations and rituals we still use today in that. So it's the OTO is what's considered a paramasonic organization, Masonic being like, you know, the Freemasons, but related, and based around the law of Thelema. So yeah, it's been a long, fruitful journey, and that's sort of where I came from.
So how long have you been on your path?
At this point, about 15 years.
So what do you think draws people to Thelema? What do you think is the appeal?
I think a lot of people are interested in knowing themselves and personal transformation. And what that means is going to be very specific to the individual. But what I was originally drawn to was out of all the occult tools and things I tried in the past, I was really fascinated by this idea that there was this core spark of divinity within inside me. When I say divinity, that word can mean a lot of different things, but bear with me there. But sort of uncovering and dusting away all of these things society forced upon me and forced me to be. So as a queer person, that would be cis presenting, straight, as just a person in general interested in the art and sort of, I don't want to say rebelling against the societal narrative, but this idea of a life I was supposed to want, I didn't. And all of these things are sort of layered on us as we live, whether that's family, society, work, culture, social norms, whatever. I was really interested in stripping away all of that. And because I was no longer interested in pursuing what I was told I wanted to pursue what I wanted. And the only way I was able to do that was to know who I am profoundly and deeply. And I think when you come to looking at the myriad of occult tools and witchcraft tools and all of these, you know, mystical systems, I think what makes Thelema special, and other things as well, but Thelema in particular, is it's willing to dive into the darker and deeper facets of humanity, all of you. And instead of taking what's considered dark or your shadow, if you want to use a Jungian term, but whatever you consider that part of yourself, instead of like, oh yeah, let me just cast that aside. It's like, no, embrace that, embrace all of these parts of yourself so that you can progress towards that divine unification of your whole self. So within that whole framework, know thyself is a system to do that. And within that's also a system to accept that. And then once you develop using this system, more broadly speaking, you have the tools to then do your will. So it's knowing and then doing. And I think it delivers on both ends of that, in my opinion. Of course, it's different for everyone, and some of the more, I don't want to say extreme, but sort of out of the box rituals and practices may not resonate with someone. But I think that's just the nature of being human in general, and less to do with Thelema. But for me, it's profoundly resonated with me. And helped me tremendously. And I think other people can relate to that.
So where are you located?
Yeah, so I'm in the southern US in North Carolina.
Okay. Do you find that there's a rich culture there, or should I say an embracing culture of the left-hand path and occult?
So it's an interesting question. I think in the metropolitan areas, Asheville, Raleigh, Durham, the Research Triangle Park in general, the more urban areas, there is a really interesting richness in occult, witchcraft, all of these things people are interested in. And specifically Thelema. It's sort of almost, I don't want to say mistake, but it's sort of happenstance that we had a lot of transplants from other parts of the country, really big names in our community, sort of plant their roots here locally. And that's led to fantastic opportunities and a very vibrant community.
A lot of people reading Aleister Crowley for the first time, some of their responses are, wow, I have no idea what he's talking about. Some find it very, very confusing. How do you approach that? And what advice do you have to the practitioner to kind of put themselves around that, as you were talking about before, and finding some commonality with those writings?
The thing that a lot of people don't understand about Crowley's writings, this is just sort of me, but one way I would describe it to someone who's approaching this for the first time is I would say, hey, in Thelema, we have these holy books over here. In terms of theirs are dictated text. This means that you can think of it as the divine. Now, what you think of the divine is up to you. If you think of it something internal and psychological or something external, that's really up to the practitioner. But that's divinity speaking through someone and using them as a megaphone. So it's not a person talking in a way that's easily understood. There's a lot of metaphor. There's a lot of flowery poetic language typically in these holy books. The OG Thelemic holy book, our central and sacred holy text, is the Book of the Law, and that's one of these. It's a dictated text, and as a result, it's going to be very hard to approach. So there's those, so different divinities or beings speaking through people. And then there's the books where Crowley wrote as himself. So that's going to be like your Magic and Theory and Practice. That's going to be like your Confessions. And what I would recommend to people is get a copy of Crowley speaking as himself, explaining these things. So 2 solid books, if you want to read Crowley off the gate, I'm going to recommend is a book called The Law is for All. And that is all about the Book of the Law, and it's Crowley's commentaries on this flowery, beautiful text. The text itself of the Book of the Law is really beautiful, really resonates with me. But if you just pick this book up and read it, it's going to be really confusing to you. And I would just encourage people to not be frustrated with it and to chill out. It'll be okay. And if you can get a copy of The Laws for All, do that. Because like I said, it's Crowley talking as a person about this other weird text. So you'll get like a really good understanding. And the other book I highly recommend by Crowley is Magic and Theory and Practice. And that's where Crowley really breaks down the theory behind how he believes magic works, his philosophy, the mechanisms there. And that's going to allow you, once you have that foundation, to approach some of this other stuff and have an idea of what he's doing, what he's saying, some of the jargon. But again, if you are not understanding some of the jargon, don't be hard on yourself. It's not impossible. It's just something you learn over time. And of course, I'm also going to recommend, on top of those other books, a book like Living Thelema by David Shoemaker. That's a really good intro book. It breaks away from the jargon and lets you get right into the practices. And as far as understanding Crowley himself, I'm going to recommend the classic biography, Perdurabo by Richard Kaczynski. And the reason I'm going to recommend that one compared to all the others out there, and there are some good biographies out there, but that one's my favorite, A, because it's so incredibly thorough, and B, because he's not pushing a political agenda or a narrative on you. I feel like a lot of these biographies on Crowley out there are just narrowed in and hyper focused on making you believe something. And I trust readers and seekers enough on their own to come up with their own opinions based on the facts. And Richard does that. He lays it all out there. And so you can have the tools and the facts to make up your own thorough opinion about Crowley and separate the fiction fiction, which there is a lot of fiction out there about him, and the reality. So yeah, good luck to everyone.
Wonderful advice. Absolutely. So, how important is ritual in your practice?
Yeah, I would say ritual is very important. I guess there's the ritual I do on my own, and then the ritual I do as a group. So of course there's like the daily practices under ideal circumstances that I do. And then there's the stuff I do in a group setting, like initiation and the Gnostic Mass, or some of the seasonal rituals I do as part of a group. And for me, ritual is sort of yeah, it's what it says. It's a practice, right? It's preparing ourselves to not only shape ourselves and our intentions and our world, but when we do come into confrontations in our day-to-day life, we have those skills or forces, or however you want to conceive that, built up, so you're ready to tackle that. So, and along with those practices, I would also include things like yoga and meditation, as not only value in and of themselves, but as a preparatory survival, getting by in this world.
I know you take oaths that you can't speak of some things, but can you tell us a little bit about life in the coven setting? What is that like on your path?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually never been in a coven, so I can't answer that question, but I am in the fraternal organization, the OTO. Um, and so the way I conceive the OTO and describe it to outsiders, if they have an idea of the Freemasons, great, because that's a lot of what we're doing, with some surprises. So we have, I would say, two sections of the OTO. We have the EGC, or Ecclesiastica Gnostica Catholica, and that's the ecclesiastical arm of the OTO. And when I say Catholica, I don't mean it's Catholic. It is not Christian at all. It's based around the law of Thelema. And then we have the initiatory track, or MMM. So the initiations themselves are all secret. So that's something open to members of the appropriate degree, or initiates only. And so that's a whole process. And in order to do that, you have to get two sponsors, fill out the paperwork, all of that. As you go up, they become invitational only. But the general idea with initiation is they are they put you through some sort of struggle or challenge that you overcome, and it's a learning opportunity. So the idea is, instead of just reading out of a book to learn something, you get to experience a dramatization and a group ritual that really instills these lessons on you or your soul, depending on what you believe. And yeah, you don't want to be under so much stress that you just blank, but if you're put under the right circumstances, these initiations can be absolutely beautiful. And sometimes when people ask me, they're like, what's the best ritual you've ever been through? Quite frankly, it's the initiations I've experienced within the OTO. Absolutely incredibly beautiful, so well done. And what a gift it is to experience something like that in the modern day. But to return back to the other ecclesiastical side, that's where they perform our central front-facing ritual that the general public can participate in, which is the Gnostic Mass. And that is really cool, because someone who isn't even a member can come to that and experience some of the magic in the community. And the OTO in general has a lot of community events that anyone can come to, like potlucks, or maybe like outings, festivities, like a solstice ritual or something like that, is open to the public. But yeah, the Gnostic Mass, like I said, is a participatory ritual that's really beautiful. And a lot of people, yeah, it's yeah, there's a lot of symbolism there, and it can be thought of as a sex magic ritual, which I know people get like really excited when they hear that, and it is exciting, but perhaps in a really nerdy axis. There is no actual sex during the ritual, but the implements used in it are metaphorical for unification of opposites. And then the question is, what is that a metaphor? So what is the sex a metaphor? And that's the mystical side, which is something the individual has to experience themselves to draw conclusions from. But yeah, it's really beautiful. And I think if someone were to be interested, you can look it up, come check it out, join if you want, don't if you don't want to. There's no pressure. And yeah, it's a good time.
I think you make a very good point. When talking about sex magic, people automatically have these ideas of a wild orgy taking place. And that's not the case. I mean, it does happen, but that's not the fundamental of magic. So you make a very good point there. So does your organization have a website or something that people can see these events that are coming up?
Yeah. Yeah, so what I would recommend doing if people would like to come to that is go to just type in OTO USA or OTO International, depending on where you're at, and there's like a little map, and find the OTO body closest to you, click on it, and it'll take you to all of these local body web pages, and then you can get in touch with them and see how they organize things locally. Sometimes the events are held at private members' homes, so there's a little bit of a vetting process because people don't, they want to know who's coming to their house, so that's a
Right.
reasonable request. And just get in touch with whatever requirements they may have. A lot of the events will be degree specific, meaning you have to be of a certain degree to go. But yeah, you can just reach out to your local body, and they should be pretty transparent about the requirements. I mean, again, like some rituals, some bodies require you to have a specific dress code when going to the ritual, like wear all black or something like that. And then I just want to encourage people who maybe have some concerns about dietary restrictions. We're really accommodating for that, and you can just ask ahead of time and make sure you communicate any restrictions you have or concerns, and that can be anything from diabetic to gluten-free. Just talk ahead of time and see what's going on and if it's going to be a good fit for you. But yeah, we're usually really pretty good here as well as other places about making all kinds of accommodations for people.
Nice. And I'll put some links in the description down there, obviously to your YouTube and your social media, but also to OTO as well.
Yeah, sure,
So maybe people
absolutely.
can go and check it out. Sounds really,
Yeah.
really exciting. Going into your practice, as you were experiencing it, what was the biggest surprise that you found, or the biggest thing that you thought is most profound as you were exploring and learning more? What would that be?
So I guess important context for me is I'm very bookish and very in the theory, in the weeds of that, what some people would say an armchair magician, meaning I'm very I don't want to say allergic to rituals, but I'm more read than I am doing stuff. So um I fell in love with the theory. I fell in love with the philosophy, the theory, the mystical elements, all of that, especially of Crowley. But it wasn't until I started practicing that I got to truly experience, I guess you could say, the magic. And it was absolutely shocking to me that I did get results from working that system. And I guess I went into it with no expectations. I said, well, in theory, this is going to produce these results, or I'm going to understand myself better and do all of this from the working, and this is going to happen. But, I guess I'm someone who is very more scientifically minded and more analytical and more bookish. So I feel like a lot of people who end up on the occult path have like some sort of natural gift, like, oh, I have psychic abilities. Oh, I'm an empath, or, you know, all of these cool things happen to me. And I've never been someone like that. I'm just sort of profoundly boring and bookish. I'm joking, but there is some truth to that. And I guess I just thought, for me, I was like, well, there's nothing special about me. Nothing's going to happen. This isn't going to work. And I would say it took more than a year of solid, dedicated work and doing a bunch of stuff before I got life changing and life altering results and experiences from that. And set me on the path of the rest of my life. And I guess, the saying is always, the saying is always specifically about Thelema. Um, when you seek to know your will, which is that innermost spark of divinity, and align your actions and align your life with that, if you're comfortable and happy with where you are and you want to keep doing that, don't do that. Because once you know, you can't go back. And once that path is ahead of you, you have no choice but to go down that path. You're never off that path. And yeah, that's been the case with me, and it's profoundly altered not only who I am, but the way my life looks and operates. And that's not to scare people, but that's to encourage people that you don't have to be someone special for this to work or get something meaningful out of it. And I think that's true with just mysticism, the occult, across the board.
I think so. So I was able to go to Loch Ness about 25 years ago and saw Crowley's home. The reason I bring it up is Crowley went to Italy, and there are wild stories about, his study there. And what do you think he was trying to accomplish, or what do you think he was looking for? Or do you
Yeah.
believe all the stories first? And if so, what do you think he was trying to accomplish?
Yeah, awesome. So that's, first of all, it's really cool. I assume you're talking about the Boleskine house, right?
Yes,
Awesome.
yes.
Yeah. And I guess for our watchers and listeners, I'll say that for the Boleskine house is actually currently under renovation. It was bought by some incredible people who are spending absurd amounts of money to return it to its former glory as a historical site. And I do believe if you were over there or live there, or traveling there, any of those things, you can possibly buy a pass to get a tour currently. So keep an eye on that. You can just like Google Boleskine House, and I really hope I have a chance to go over there as well and just sort of feel the magic on the grounds. And what a beautiful property. And I don't want to dwell on that. I know you asked me about the Abbey of Thelema, but I'm really excited about the Boleskine House project as well, and all of the dedicated people putting their time, energy, and quite frankly, love into that. So that's super cool. Um,
That's wonderful news. Thank you for sharing that, because it's a beautiful place, a beautiful surrounding. It was a little in disrepair. However, his garden area, the enclosed area where he did a lot of his rituals, the outdoor part of it that was just sand, it was still there, and you could almost feel the magic. You could almost imagine at night, the moon shining down and it just being such a special place. It was really interesting. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you can follow them on like all different types of social media, like on Instagram, and they post like updates. They're also restoring the garden, and they have like a bunch of native plants in there, which is super cool. So, but yeah, to talk about the Abbey of Thelema, it is currently not a fun place to visit. It's fallen into severe disrepair. Vandals have basically annihilated and destroyed it. The roof is caved in. It's just not a place that it's just horrible. All of that history lost, all of those beautiful murals painted by Crowley, and others are vandalized over, destroyed by the weather, all of this. But I think that the Abbey of Thelema does have historical significance, and there was a lot of cool people and experiments and work that was done there. It's a really fascinating time in history. The general idea was Crowley set up the Abbey of Thelema to be like this worldwide mecca, beacon of Thelema in the world. And, that was cool until it wasn't. This was during the rise of fascism in Italy. And eventually, there was a lot of very unconventional living at that particular residence where, you know, various relations, polyamory, queer, all of that was occurring, and just in general kind of being weird magicians, and Mussolini kicked them out. And they left. So that was kind of what happened to the Abbey of Thelema, as fascism put an end to that. But I think what Crowley was trying to do was Crowley was trying to listen to which you would say is, I guess this is the whole unpacking of who Crowley was and what Thelema is, but Crowley was listening to Aiwass, or his holy guardian angel, and trying to know and do his will. And I think his magical experiments are an extension of that. So I guess for people who are hearing this for their first time, like, what is Aiwass? What does this all mean? So okay, so let me just like back it up a bit in history to kind of explain forward. So Crowley was this British guy who grew up he's a queer man who grew up in a very Christian restrictive household. And so the story of his life is one not only of discovering magic and the Golden Dawn and ceremonial magic, all of that, but also one of coming to terms with his queer identity and exploring that in a world that basically said you shouldn't exist, and embracing that whole thing. So Crowley was doing that, and along his path, he traveled the world, explored a lot of different religions, and eventually, while he was a Buddhist, and married to his wife Rose Crowley, they were in Egypt, did a working. Rose was not an occultist, but long story short, they channeled this text called the Book of the Law. And a lot of people have a lot of different feelings about this book. Some people believe that this external entity called Aiwass dictated it through Crowley. A lot of people think it's a part of Crowley's consciousness. You know, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I truly believe that people should make that up on their own and come to their own conclusions. That's the free thinker in me. But regardless of how you feel, this text was produced. Crowley, for the most part, forgot about it, rediscovered it later, and basically this text was announcing the dawn of a new aeon, the Aeon of Horus. And this is an aeon characterized by freedom, movement away from the old Abrahamic religions, which had a more dead god Osiris risen formula, into the Aeon of the Child and the Aeon of Horus, which is a different magical formula. I know this might be a lot for people to take in, but bear with me, we'll get to the point. And so that's the general idea, is Crowley got this message and kept getting these messages to proliferate the law of Thelema and proliferate this freedom in this new aeon. And I think the Abbey of Thelema was part of this general mission of listening to this Aiwass and this general message of freedom to move people into a new age, away from the old formulas of the old Abrahamic religions. And just his life is a story of that, chasing his will.
And it's really an interesting story. I've read everything I could get my hands on, and I think the most interesting part to me was when he was in Egypt, and he was really grappling. He was really trying to get to the root of things. And I think the second thing that impresses me is the length of his rituals. Some of those rituals went on days and months, and there's actually one, you may know the name of it, I forget now, but it went on for months, and he never really finished it, from what people say. But true devotion to the craft.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's really reflective too of ceremonial magic being these much longer workings. And you know, you can use ceremonial magic for a lot of different things, of course, but the general idea is you are doing it for these larger spiritual aspirations or these larger spiritual goals, such as, like, you know, the divine unification, you know, things like that, the path of return, all of these like sort of larger, lofty goals. And that's a work that takes years. That's a work that takes a lifetime, and you may not finish it. Where in contrast, something like more Wicca or more witchcraft, which I know a lot of people are familiar with, is more like short workings based on Earth here, you know, to connect to nature or for more material gains, which is of course valid. I'm not saying it's not, but it is different. So whereas you might do a spell for luck or good fortune or money, you would perhaps embark on a larger operation over the course of many years. And that's yeah, that's definitely a pretty common formula for not only Crowley, but occultists in general.
So how do you see the occult, or your particular practice, how do you see it evolving in the future?
I hope I never stop learning. I hope I never stop challenging myself. I think I look forward to the evolution of me and the evolution of my thoughts, ideas, perspectives, all of that. And I actively challenge myself to learn new things outside of my tradition as well, or path, if you prefer that term. So that's one of the reasons I'm involved in the local pagan community. And I recently did a not the one putting it on, I was just a participant, but did an ADF druid ritual. That was really my first time doing like a full druid ritual. That was really enlightening. I love talking to people in witchcraft or paganism. I just really broadens my horizons. So I'm pretty like well knowledgeable about Satanism and Thelema and ceremonial magic. Even within those spaces, it's just fun to experience new things. So right now, I'm obviously doing a lot of Thelema. My daily practice as well as my monthly, yearly practices are so wrapped up in that system. It just takes a lot of my time, but I like to make room for other things too. Not to go into too many specifics here, but I do plan on starting a long process of doing a bunch of Enochian workings. So that's for those who know what that is or don't know what that is, that's more working with angels and the work of John Dee. Excuse me. And yeah, that should be really interesting. I've never done an Enochian working before, so it's a new area for me.
So, a lot of people say there's no difference between angels and demons. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that there are a lot of different perspectives on angels and demons. So I've heard people talk about demons. Some people, like demonolators, view them as being old pagan gods to be worshipped that have just been sort of lost in translation over the times. Other people view them, a lot of perhaps Solomonic practitioners, they view demons as aberrant forces of nature. And I think viewing them the same as angels, sure. I mean, I think there's space in there to have those beliefs. I guess for me, I always approach work whether with demons, angels. Of course, I'm a ceremonial magician, so there's going to be a lot of ceremony. I just really love the ritual laid out. That's the type of magic that resonates with me. So I'm going to be doing the really long rituals with the implements and the robes, if possible. But yeah, in general, I like to approach these things with an open mind. There isn't oftentimes a thing I'm looking for. I'm just looking to know and to understand and experience. And I honestly think, as an occultist, if I leave those doors open, if I leave my mind open, my heart open, you get so much more out of these workings because you're often surprised. So I yeah, I guess I like to live in a state of being surprised and experimentation.
I agree with you. Some of the best things that happen are not planned out. They're just surprises, and they're very impressive. I agree with that. So, a lot of us in our practice have been attacked along the way from trolls or um, Christians or even from the left-hand path itself. Have you experienced that? And if so, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I get a lot of that online. I don't want to like categorize it, but I think there in general are people who are discontent with themselves and they sort of project that onto me, which is, I don't want to say a cheap thing to say, but I think it's really real. I notice the criticism I get, just a bunch of vague, random, weird, hurtful stuff really has nothing to do with me because people don't really know anything about me. They just like project things that they think I believe. And so that's sort of a theme of a lot of my content and a lot of my videos. I love sharing passions for things and how to do things and information, but I want to leave it up to the viewer and the other practitioners to know what it means to them or doesn't mean. And so yeah, I often get people who just think I think something, and I'm like, wow, that could be further from the truth. That's not me. Um, and yeah, a lot of people don't understand what our work looks like or what we're doing or what we're trying to do. Same with like a lot of our work in, organizations like fraternal occult organizations like the OTO. And the way I deal with it, quite frankly, is having boundaries, respecting my time, respecting my energy, and guarding that. Because again, for me, in order for me to do my will, I don't just have to say yes to the things in life that I want and want to be doing. I have to say no to the things I don't want to be doing and don't want to waste my time. Because if you don't have that filtration process, if you don't have those boundaries, then you won't have time to know and do your will. You won't have time for the things that matter and the creation process, which I so love, whether that's my art or writing or making videos, whatever it is. If I could literally spend all day responding to comments, responding to emails, and to what end? I don't have time for it all. So I guess for me, I just set aside a block of time to go through comments and go through emails or whatever, and then I'm done. A lot of people do write me these long emails, and that's so touching, like how amazing it is that people think I'm worthy of that. But at the same time, if there's not a question I can answer and it's just someone sharing, I got to move on. And that's not me saying that email was worthless. It's me saying, well, cool, but I got to spend this time somewhere else. So yeah, I would just encourage people to spend their time wisely. Have boundaries online, have boundaries on your time too. Don't endlessly scroll if you can help it. And the block function is your friend, because there's obviously people who aren't coming at things from a place of understanding. They just are just really angry and want to use you as a punching bag or whatever their deal is, project things onto you. Move on, block and move on, and save time for the things that matter.
Well said. That's some great advice. And speaking of advice, there may be someone out there listening tonight, and they're looking to find the right path where they belong. And they've tried some different things, but what advice would you have to help them get on a path? What would be the words of wisdom that you would give that individual?
I would say treat yourself with kindness and forgiveness and patience. It's all part of the process. None of us were like born knowing everything. So especially when it comes to ceremonial magic, which is so academic, so hard to wrap your head around. And, there's a lot of kind of grumpy people, curmudgeonly people in our community online. And who knows where that comes from? It doesn't matter. But the important thing is it's kind of there, and don't let them discourage you. You're learning. If you're passionate, your heart is in it. And don't be afraid to try things out. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. When I'm speaking other languages for rituals, I'm really bad at pronunciation, but I do the best I can because it's within my abilities. So don't let that stop you. Don't let pronunciation stop you. Don't let a lack of knowledge stop you. Just keep pushing through. And what really matters is you and your spiritual path and honoring who you are and where you're at. And I think as long as you do that and you listen to yourself, you'll be going in the right direction, regardless of where that direction is.
Well said. So do you have a special message for our viewers? Anything you would like to share with them?
Wow, it's going to be kind of similar, and that's keep going. But, kind of cheesy, but find the space to have compassion for yourself. So I think like so much of the new age movement and like the broader general message is compassion for other people and empathy. And that's a beautiful, great thing. But I think we need, a lot of us, especially those who are raised in such a guilt-ridden culture, and perhaps people who end up in Thelema or left-hand path, are looking to shed that guilt. And one of the key features of it is finding compassion for yourself. So for example, if you have a bunch of daily practices you're doing and you miss one or you mess it up or you don't remember, forgive yourself, move on. Don't use your spiritual path or practice as another metric to berate yourself. That's what a lot of us were instilled in We get these spiritual tools and we just slap them right back onto an Abrahamic religion mindset of like, oh, if I don't do this or know this, that I'm not as worthy. No, you are already a divine being in and of yourself, period. It's a question of honoring that, figuring out who you are and honoring that, honoring your will. And you're going to do that through love, through compassion for you. And that's hard. And I'm guilty of it too, where I have this huge list of things I wish I could do day to day or just in general, but our lifetimes will never be long enough and we will never achieve this impossible state of perfection. But all of our idiosyncrasies, all of our human parts, we are not divine in spite of, we are divine because of.
Very inspiring. So thank you very much, Lynn, for taking time to be here tonight. Again, I'll put the links down in the description and check it out. I think there is a path for everyone, and this may be yours. So spend some time and check it out. So until next time, this has been Aleister Nacht. Ave Satanas.